So before I tell you about the history of the Colorchecker, I wanted to let you know that now have 100,000 subscribers, which is a big milestone in my YouTube channel, and this is something I've been at for a long time, and in teaching instructional videos on how to paint in oil, that's a pretty good milestone to meet. So thank you again for all your views and for watching my videos, and without further ado, here is history of the Colorchecker. I suspect that in history many artists have used color checking in one form or another. I know Vermeer did his own version of color checking, or at least there's all the evidence to show that he did. And there's probably ways to color check that I'm not even aware of. But I came to color checking independently when I first started painting. When I was supposed to do a portrait of my mother, and I looked into the shadow on her neck and really had no clue. This is the very first oil painting I ever did, just happened to be a portrait of my mother. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I was very confused as to what color should I paint that dark shadow, I remember, on her neck, and really had no clue as to what color I should mix up. So what I did was I took a little bit of paint and I put it on an edge of a photograph and held it up in a certain way, and I was in the same amount of light as my mother, and I understood that I needed to do that, and I would compare my paint to the color on her neck, and that was really the first time I had ever used color checking, and it was right at the beginning when I first started painting, just in my own confusion, trying to figure out what color was right and what was wrong. And so I started to do that, and that's kind of how I learned how to mix colors. And so from the very beginning, even in my second painting, my values were pretty much in check, and my colors were pretty good, and that was only because I was matching one color to another. And even early on, when I started working from photographs, I would just laminate a photograph and put a smear of color right on the laminated photograph, and I could match my colors that way. And so I suspect there have been artists who have been doing that for years, even before I came up with that idea for myself. So when I first started, like I told you, I would put a little bit of paint on the back of a photograph and hold it out like that. And then I figured out I could do the same thing with my brush. So I would just mix my colors, and if I left enough paint on the end of my brush, enough so that the bristles weren't poking through the paint, I could use my brush just like a color checker, and I could sit in front of one of my clients. When I was doing my portraits, I would have my subject sit in a chair. I would put them in the same amount of light as I was in, and then I would put the flesh tones right on my brush and hold out, and I would match my colors just like that, just using a brush, and very simple. And that if you can do it, is the easiest and simplest way to do color checking, because it's so much faster to just pick up your brush and hold it out and check it like that, instead of having to paint it on a color checker and do it that way. But the problem is that I discovered in the first formal class that I taught, where I had 10 people coming in and had never done color checking before, and a lot of those people, the majority of my students, had a real hard time using a brush to see the color, because you're dealing with little spots of glare, you're dealing with the hairs possibly poking through the paint and affecting that, and it's just a lot more complicated, and you have to sort of be able to see past that. And so all of that, those details on how to use a color checker is in my video, Color Checker Basics, which you can find at drawmixpaint.com. This is the Geneva color checker, and this one has a very long neck here that supports the circle. And the reason that's better is because if I'm holding this out and checking a color, now this circle is floating up in the middle of my still life, and it's not being blocked by my hand like the old design, which would have been like this. Now the vase that's here is getting completely blocked by my hand, and I can't see, where the color is relative to the edge. But now that I hold it like this, now this circle is floating way up there, and that's the advantage of this over my original design. But if you don't want to purchase one from Geneva Fine Art, again, I've got a video on how to make your own, so go check that one out. So that's about it for the history of the color checker, and I wanted to quickly let you guys know that 2018, we've got a whole bunch of fun projects that we're in the middle of at Geneva Fine Art, and I've also got a long list of some really fun and exciting videos that I'm going to be producing, and we're actually going to be increasing our video production quite a bit for 2018. We've got a lot of things planned, so stay tuned for that, and thank you guys for watching.